Hello everyone, my name is Megan. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. Hope you guys are doing well and staying safe. Today we are here to talk about 10 books that are coming out in the month of March that are in the YA genre that I think you should be on the lookout for. Now obviously this list is compiled of books that I find interesting, as well as some books that even though I'm not super interested in, I know other people will deem them of interest. Some of them I've mentioned before on my channel, some of them I recently just learned about. And so let's hop on in. I do have two honorable mentions, which I don't think they need a lot of explaining. The first one is Chain of Iron, which is a book by Cassandra Clare that is coming out on March 2nd, which is part of one of her many Shadowhunter series. I have not read Further Than the City of Bones, so I'm not aware of this series, but in case you're a Cassandra Clare fan and you missed out on the news, Chain of Iron is coming out on March 2nd. The other book that does not need a lot of explanation, but I think is worth mentioning in case you did not know, is Rule of Wolves by Leigh Bardugo, which is the second book in the newer series that she has released. The first book being King of Scars, and that one comes out on March 30th. So now let's jump into the books with a little bit more detail to them. I am going to go in order of publication date, and so the first book I'm going to talk about releases on March 2nd, and it is Follow Your Arrow by Jessica Verdi. This one is a book I've never seen anyone else talk about, and I stumbled kind of randomly upon while looking at the Goodreads list for the March releases, and this is one that I personally find that sounds super interesting. So this one follows a main character named Cece, who is in a relationship with this girl. I believe her name is Sylvie, and they are both super well-known influencers on the social media world, so kind of like Instagram or YouTube or whatever. And they end up breaking up. I believe that Cece's girlfriend decides to break up with her, and so not only is Cece heartbroken, she's also scared of how it's going to impact her social media presence, because obviously it's like they were couple goals, everybody loved them together, but what about them as separate individuals? This also follows Cece as she ends up falling in love with a boy, and Cece has always known that she is bisexual, but I think this will also have to do with the topic of shaming those who are bisexual, and a lot of time you're not valid if you're bisexual but are attracted to men, and there's a lot of discourse going around that, and I think it's going to be a very valuable book, and if it touches upon the social media aspect of things, I think it's also going to be super interesting to see what the author decides to do, and I'm guessing it's going to be like a romantic story with a coming of age twist, and I love those books, and again, it comes out on March 2nd. The next book also comes out on March 2nd, and it is called Yoke by Mary H.K. Choi, who is a very well-known author in the YA new adult genre. I personally have not read any of her books, but I haven't heard a lot about this third novel of hers coming out, and so I thought it would be nice to kind of showcase it here. This one essentially follows a main character who I believe her name is Jane, and she's kind of like struggling. She's barely getting by in her fashion school. She doesn't really like her boyfriend anymore, and all her friends are just chasing clout, is literally what the blurb says. And so she's really struggling, and I believe she also deals with a eating disorder, but that has not been kind of diagnosed or talked or even kind of reflected upon, and she thinks it's just normal, the normal life living in New York City, so obviously trigger warnings for eating disorders. And I believe she has either like a stepsister or a long-lost sister who is thriving in the world, and she's doing all sorts of great things. However, I believe her sister gets hit with cancer, and so they kind of rekindle, and it's obviously going to have some harder topics, but it also says that the book is kind of funny and has funny, lighthearted tone, so I believe it's going to be the discussion of obviously eating disorders and cancer and kind of like struggles of life and appearances and how that all blends together. I don't know why the book is called Yoke. I guess you'll have to read to figure it out, but this one also comes out on March 2nd. The next book I want to talk about is one I already featured on my channel, and I'm so incredibly excited is releasing in March. Again, another March 2nd release, and that book is I Think I Like You by Oriane Dezombe, I'm so sorry. And this one is another LGBTQ book where actually I don't know if it's dual perspective or not, but one of the main characters in this book wants to enter a film festival, and she's like super into romance and love and all of those things, and she wants to create kind of a romantic movie to enter this film festival. All she has to do is convince her friends. However, I believe one of her other friends is really trying to create a film with a message, and she's very pragmatic. She doesn't really believe in romance, and that's not the kind of movie she wants to create, and so it's their disagreement, and I believe they fall in love behind the camera and behind the scenes of creating this movie. The cover for this one, absolutely stunning, and I've heard really great things about this. I tried to make a list with early reviews that were actually very positive, and so this one seems like it's going to be enjoyed and has been enjoyed by a lot of people. The last March 2nd release we have is called Once Upon a Quinceanera, and this one looks absolutely adorable. Again, the cover fabulous, and I believe that this one has Latinx inspired representation, and this one follows a main character who has a summer internship that is unpaid, and I believe it's like she has to dress up in costumes and like dance and whatever, and the company she works for is like going to parties, and they're kind of like entertainment, and so the latest person to hire this company is actually her cousin, who I don't think our main character really gets along with, and they have hired the business for the cousin's quinceanera party, and our main character has to struggle with that, and also the fact that her new dance partner at work is her ex, and so I think that she is going to try and just kind of get through it to advance in her future, but then maybe she's going to have a second chance romance, or obviously there's going to be a romance and things will be learned, and it's a YA book and it sounds absolutely adorable, and so I think it's worth checking out. The next one is one I haven't really heard anything about, and it is called Perfect on Paper. This one releases on March 9th, and it sounds really cool. So the main character in this book kind of has this kind of sketchy advice column where people drop letters in a locker, and she responds to them and gives advice anonymously. But one day, a boy she absolutely hates discovers her secret, and so he blackmails her that in order for her to like remain anonymous and not screw up her entire life if everybody kind of catches the drift that she's the one responding to the letters, she needs to help him get his ex back. So her purpose is to make the girl who used to date this guy fall in love with him again, and I think they're going to fall in love in the process of that happening. I just think that this is such a fun concept, and I don't know why it's a random trope I love, but anything that has to do with like anonymous letters, I'm in 100%, so this one is like new to me and sounds really incredible. Another March 9th release, and I think our last March 9th release, is a book called, and I'm looking at my computer because I always forget this one, Can't Take That Away by Stephen Salvatore. This author is actually genderqueer. They go by the pronouns they and them, and this kind of translates into the story because this novel written by this author is actually about a genderqueer individual. I think actually the two main characters are, and it's a lot about the representation of that, and it also deals with homophobic comments, and one of our main characters is having a hard time dealing with that, even though he wants to be a diva, he wants to be on Broadway, but dealing with all the hate from one of the classmates he's encountered is actually causing more pain, which obviously is a real issue in our lives. A lot of people, you know, we're not going to get into that, but I think that this story will be very important, and that the romance in here, because I think there is a romance, will be super interesting, and I'm just really happy that we get more first-hand representation of this issue. I think that there's not enough representation of trans people, genderqueer people, and I think it's such a valuable thing, and they should be able to see themselves represented, Jesus, I can't talk, in novels, and so I'm very much looking forward to that one for that reason, and just because, you know, the story sounds like it's going to be hard-hitting, but really interesting at the same time. I mean, people are more than just their personal identity, and I think it's fun that we have that in the book, but that the book seems to have other content as well, and I'm very much looking forward to that. Then we have a March 16th release, which I don't really want to get into, but I just want to kind of shout out that Namesake, the sequel to Fable by Adrian Young, is coming out. This is a kind of pirate romance, siren romance novel. I don't really know. The thing is, I really want to read Fable. I just haven't picked it up for myself yet because I'm not too much of a fantasy reader, but that one kind of gives me Daughter of the Pirate King vibes, and I really want to read it. And that's the sequel, which its cover is absolutely stunning. So if any of you guys read the first book and did not know when the second book was releasing, it's releasing in March. It was just an FYI. I don't even want to read the blurb because I don't want to spoil myself or what happens in the first book, but I'm just kind of throwing it out there. Then on March 23rd, which is the day after my birthday, and it's super exciting that like my birthday's close to a release date. I love that. We have a novel called Bruise, and this one, again, it just kind of popped up in my research, and it seemed so interesting and very different from the YA I'm used to reading, so that's kind of why I wanted to include it in this video. This book essentially centers itself around roller derby, which I love the concept of roller derby. I love rollerblading. I love anything that's kind of related to it. So having a YA book that kind of explores that is really interesting. And essentially our main character, and the reason our book is called Bruise is because our main character has seen bruises as kind of controlled pain ever since both her parents have passed away. So there are trigger warnings again for this book, which you should probably research before going into it if it's something that can seem harmful to you in any way. And I think that bruises and maybe the harm that comes with it is how our main character feels she can control her pain and not have to deal head on with the impact that the death of her parents has left on her. And then one day she stumbles upon roller derby, and I guess that she enters this world, and that this whole plot will revolve around both the grieving process and roller derby, which sounds like an interesting mix of things, and I'm really looking forward to see what people think about it, and I might pick it up myself. Who knows? The next book is another book I found during my research. And let me tell you, I got super excited because it's exactly the kind of YA I want in my life. I added it to my Amazon wish list straight away. It comes out the day after my birthday, so it might be something I purchase if I get gift cards. Which, shout out to my family. If you don't know what to get me for my birthday, gift cards, please. But anyways. The book is called The Secret Recipe for Moving On, and this is like a baking, oh, I love baking books. I love baking myself, so this is just like, it gets me in the feels. And this one follows a main character who was jumped by her boyfriend named Hunter on the first day of their like senior semester, I guess. And not only that, she now has class with her ex-boyfriend and his new girlfriend. And she's like in a group with a bunch of random people, and I guess that there's like a baking competition. I don't know, I guess it's like a cooking or baking class. And she tries to one-up her ex-boyfriend, and in the process gets to be really close with this group of like ragtag random people she got set up with, and I guess she falls in love with another boy during the process, but things obviously will be more complicated. I just want to say the name Hunter for a main male character gives me life. I love it so much. That's beside the point though. I think this will be fantastic, kind of light and fluffy, more on that side of the YA scale, which is one thing I really enjoy and still read in YA, so I'm really excited for this one. The cover is gorgeous, and I haven't heard anyone else talk about it, so again, check it out. And the last book on my never-ending list is With You All the Way by Cynthia Hand. This one follows a main character who gets very much humiliated when she attempts to lose her V-card and finds out that her boyfriend is cheating on her. So obviously that doesn't go well, and then our main character goes on a vacation to Hawaii and finds out that her mom is also having an affair. And so it's kind of her dealing with learning all of these new things and still trying to, I guess, attempt to maybe experience things, and how when you don't manage your feelings right, you might not feel comfortable with love and all the other things that kind of come with it. And so I think it's kind of a coming of age story dealing with a lot of cheating and trauma that is involved with that, with someone or some people in that case in your life. And I think it will be really interesting. I've heard that Cynthia Hand really does tackle harder topics very well, and so I'm interested to see how that will go. I also really like the Hawaii inclusion of this. Any book that's set in an island or somewhere that makes me feel like summer is really much appreciated. And so, last book on my list, and it comes out March 30th if I didn't mention that yet. So that was it for today's video. Let me know if you have any other books that I missed in this video that you were excited about, or if you learned about anything new. I hope this was helpful to at least one of you, and I will see you very soon with another video. Bye guys, happy reading!